Men are providers and protectors naturally. Is that true? Modern advice disempowers and belittles men. It's full of generalizations, limitations, and a scarcity mindset. In this series, called The Unstoppable Man, we're going to be looking at some of the damaging narratives or limiting narratives that we see in our coaching practice with men and also in online discourse. We look at how these narratives are damaging and holding men back, the unhealthy or limiting beliefs that underpin those damaging narratives, what the more healthy or confident version of those beliefs would be, and how to nurture those and create a new story that will help you become the most unstoppable version of you. My name is Sam, and I am the founder and lead coach here at Catch. Unshakable confidence is the key to getting everything that you want in life and dating. So on this channel, we help you to build that unshakable confidence and become the most unstoppable version of you. If you're interested in coaching with us when that is available, or any of our tools to help you build your confidence at home, or more of our relevant videos, all that information is in the description box below. We're also running a giveaway competition at the moment where when we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be giving away 3 prizes with a value of up to £250. It's free to enter, and again, all that information is in the description box below. In our first Unstoppable Man series video, we talked about the damaging narrative or the myth that men's value is built rather than being intrinsic. And one of the points that we touched upon in that video is linked to the narrative about men's value being built is that men are protectors and providers. That is their role in a heteronormative romantic relationship. It's their role in society, and because of that, their value is built and isn't just about who they are or what they can bring to the table or the value that they add in other ways outside of being that financial provider or protector role. So we're going to be looking at this narrative that men are naturally providers and protectors, or that's the value that they bring to society, and why we think that's damaging in this video. Well, the first thing to address is the financial provider point. So firstly, when people say that men are providers, what they're really saying is that men are the financial, or should be the financial providers in a romantic relationship or more generally in society. The first point to address is that that has been changing since the 1950s, since the civil rights movement, since feminism, since women started entering the workforce and more diverse groups started entering the workforce. Now many women earn for themselves. And I read recently that 60% of households are now dual income in the US, and 40% of households, women are now the main breadwinner. So factually, when we look at this narrative that men are the financial providers, that's not really true when you put that under scrutiny, at least in Western societies, and if we take the US or the UK, where I am as an example. Women are the most financially independent that they've ever been and are the most educated that they've ever been. And in fact, I think I saw a study also that in the early 20s age bracket, women are starting to out-earn men. And the flip comes when women start to have children. So factually, this narrative that men are the financial providers or should be is no longer as relevant as it once was. It also is damaging because it ties a man's value to what he can bring to the table and what he can provide financially, and not who he is as a person. So it really limits how men are seen in society as the people who have the physical strength and have the money, whereas there are some women who are now able to be the breadwinners or provide financially, and there are some men who have other skills which are much more valuable to the world or much more authentic to who they are as individuals than financial provision or physical strength in that protector type role. And so we explored this more in the first video, that when you attach your value to things that society tells you you should be doing or a man should be doing, it can really damage your confidence over time, because it's telling you that the things that you naturally are not valuable and you should be something else. So it's telling you that who you are and maybe the things that you bring to the table are good or not good enough based on this arbitrary value that society has decided. And so in that prior video, we talked about how to reframe and build your confidence around what you bring to the table and some of your characteristics, your value, your integrity, and who you are, not just what you bring. However, what we have noticed is that there's two things going on with this narrative. One, there are several women and men who still perpetuate this idea that men's value is based on being a financial provider. And I think this is because a lot of men cling to this narrative because it feels like something that's achievable, that is within their control, and is perhaps easier to attain than other types of character flaws or other types of characteristics, not character flaws, or other things that they would need to develop within themselves. So some people cling to this narrative about men being the providers because that's the role they want to play, or maybe they come from money, or they see a route to earn money, and therefore if their value is tied to just that seems like an easy and achievable thing for them. So there's a lot of men who are perpetuating this, and usually they're selling a service, right? The people that push that men need to earn money, there might be a course then that they're selling to earn money, or something else. So there's a benefit for them in terms of their own confidence and value, but also what they're bringing to the world and what they want to see. The other group of people that we see still perpetuating that men are the protectors and the providers is there are a lot of women who still talk about that, and that's something that they look for. And particularly in certain cultures, certain countries globally, it's still very much expected of the men. And there is some practicality to that, because if you look in some countries like the US, there is barely any maternity leave that's available to families. And so if two people want to have children, then there's a practical aspect that someone needs to be earning the money whilst a woman is physically and mentally recovering from childbirth or breastfeeding and therefore not able to earn as much. And even once the children are older, you need to have flexibility in work to be able to do school pickups or take them to different clubs, etc., or take them to nursery, take them to pre-K. And therefore, you need to have people who have flexible work or maybe are at home. And that tends to fall to the woman because in the earlier years, it makes more sense that the woman is physically there in a straight relationship. However, when you look at other countries where there's more of a maternity leave, salaries tend to be more equal and sharing of the household tasks tends to be more equal, even between straight couples. Again, when we look at this role of men being providers and protectors, it makes sense to some people who want to have children and want to, women in particular who want to stay home with their children. And therefore they want to see a man who can provide for a family to enable that dynamic. However, with the cost of living and house prices being on average 11 to 14 times one person's income, most households, and as I said, 60% earlier was the stat that I read, now need to be dual income to pay for a family home and a family lifestyle. However, there are women out there or people out there who are happy to take on some of the financial provision and enjoy that and want to have a career. There's people that don't want to have children. There's people who want to have children later in life or have already had their children. So even if you look at financial provision and apply that to a very specific scenario of having children and having a family in a straight relationship, that's for a very specific point in time, and it doesn't apply to everybody through their whole life. So to identify in that way and value yourself in that way, even if it does feel safer and easier, it may only apply for a very limited amount of time. The other thing to mention here is that I think a lot of people latch on to this narrative that men are the protectors and the providers because it's known. It is the previous model for relationships and how relationships were done. And so because it's known, it seems less scary than, as I say, developing other characteristics or putting yourself out there to be chosen for who you are rather than what you provide. in some ways it's easier, and you see women do this with other characteristics, right? Like their looks or their youth, etc. It's easier to assign your value to something than who you are as a person, and feel like you're going to be chosen for certain characteristics that you feel like you already have or you've been blessed with or are easy to attain, than to put yourself out there for who you are and be chosen for purely who you are. So really ask yourself, if you resonate with this narrative, why is it that you are attracted to it? Is it because it's safe? Is it because it's known? Is it because you're scared of really showing who you really are? Is it because there's a practical aspect of bringing up children? And the reason it's useful to interrogate that is because if your confidence, as I say, is aligned to something that you provide and not who you are, it is very risky that you could lose that at some point in the future, and therefore you would lose your confidence overnight. If you were to stop earning money, or you were to retire and you didn't, something happened, you suddenly wouldn't see any value in yourself. So it's a very fragile place to be. Also, for those people who seek a financial provider or who value themselves as a financial provider, although the roles are defined and for some that feels safer, we're also seeing the negative impacts of that. So you may have read online about the male loneliness epidemic. People are talking more about the suicide levels of boys and men and how those are higher than they are for women. And I think when you look at how society has set up these gender roles, that men are meant to be the providers, the protectors, are not supposed to show emotion, and they're only valued for what they can, bring to the table or supply to others, not who they are. It's unsurprising that firstly, the pressure of being the sole financial provider with the cost of living where it is would be incredibly stressful, and therefore could have negative impacts on the mental health of men, and also make them feel isolated and in competition with those around them to earn the most and be the strongest and be the most attractive. But also it prevents real intimacy, because a man might be thinking, okay, I have to earn the money, but also I don't know if someone really likes me or just wants me for my money and what I can provide. So it produces this real conflict, and again, can it affect someone's confidence? And so when we look at that and how society is playing out with these gender roles, which although are being broken down, are still present in some societies, and then we look at where men are as a group and the mental health levels and how they're feeling about themselves, it's something's not working. So we can look at it at the individual level and why it's not working and why it might not be producing the most healthy relationships. We can look at how factually this narrative is no longer as relevant as it once was. But we can also look at the negative impacts it's having on men as a group. And it doesn't seem to be working, is the conclusion. So how do we break free from that? How do we start to define ourselves as not just a financial provider and a protector? Well, what we need to do is start to tell ourselves a new narrative about what we as individuals and as for men as a group, what we bring to the table. One way we can do this is redefining what a provider and a protector means. So when someone says the word provider, they usually just mean financial, but maybe what you can provide or bring to the table for you or your family or to those in your life is not just financial, but how do you bring emotional security? How do you bring fun? How do you bring adventure? How do you bring romance? How do you bring safety in terms of emotional safety as well as physical safety? How do you bring love? How do you bring peace into a home or into the lives of those around you? Or how do you bring integrity and confidence and stability? What are those things internally that you can develop that will help you feel the best that you can because they're authentic to you and who you truly are, so that you're happier, and then that makes the people around you even happier as well? If there's any men watching this and you need some help with how to do that, of course, watch our videos. We have a lot of videos that tackle how to build your beliefs, how to build your confidence, how to overcome limiting beliefs, but also speak to people in your life, particularly women or people in the LGBTQIA plus community or non-binary people, because, and I was talking about this with someone who I met recently, women through feminism have had to break out of the gender role that was assigned to them, and despite what society was telling them that we're weaker, we're more emotional, we can't do certain things, we had to break out of that and decide for ourselves, no, we are just as intelligent, we can achieve in the workplace, we can achieve in education, we can earn just as much, and then fight for those things. And the same with people who are in the LGBTQ community, because they're not in a straight relationship necessarily where they've been told, okay, this is your role in a relationship and this is your role in a relationship. If you've got two men together or two women together, they have to define what each of them brings to that relationship and their dynamic together. And they, again, often break out of these gender norms because of that. So speak to those people in your life and ask them, how did you go about finding out who you truly were, what made you happy, and defining that for yourself? Because they would be able to provide, I think, some really helpful insight onto the journey that they've been on. If we can do that and start to break free of the narratives that are put upon us and find who we really are and who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world, that will help build our inner confidence, because we're not having to shapeshift or fit ourselves into this mold that we believe is what other people want or society expects of us. We can define what success, happiness, and even provision or protection or being the best version of ourselves looks like in the world and what we care about. And not only does that then help us release who we really are and build that confidence in that inner, that who we truly are deep down, and we can inspire others to shift as well. It can be scary, the potential judgment of coming out as who we really are, starting to show up authentically for who we are and not what people around us expect. But what's interesting is that once you find that confidence and start going down your own path, you will see that other people start to respect you and honour that. And what should be most important is that your happiness and fulfillment at the end of the day, and finding people who align with you. So if you're sitting there going, yeah, I've never really believed in this provider and protector mindset, rather than looking at the people around you who you don't resonate with and feeling like you need to live up to their expectations, if you can define your own path and start to go down that and live authentically, you can look for and find spaces with people who align with you. So more forward-thinking people, others who have broken out of that mold, and that might require making new friends or moving to a new area that aligns with you. But that's where you're going to find that true inner happiness and confidence in who you are. So again, if you want to break free from these narratives, speak to those around you who have been through it. Do some introspection and figure out what your values really are and who you really want to be and the value you want to add in this world. Nurture those inner characteristics within yourself rather than those external aspects. And then start to forge a path and surround yourself with the people who align with that, because there are every kind of belief system in this world. So you will find people who align with that. So rather than live your life restricted or controlled and being told what to do, you can find a path that works for you. And that's the other aspect to this too. When we look at society and the narratives that define what different groups should be, a lot of that comes down to control and wanting to have a population who live a certain way, similar to those around them. And that's more easily controllable group of people. Even if the other things we've talked about in terms of your confidence, your happiness, fulfillment, alignment of relationships and having true relationships, if those reasons don't appeal to you, break free of others around you trying to control you, because you deserve to live the life that you want. If you have any questions or reactions to that, or maybe you've been on your own journey in terms of breaking free of some of your family or friends or society's expectations, would love to hear below your experiences. This is the second in the series, so if you haven't seen the first one on about men's value is built, check that out. We created a playlist on the channel, and there will be a new one of these videos releasing every week. So great to see you. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.